Great, that was like drinking from a fire hose. For those of you who are uninitiated to the intersection of trade and development. I can warn you in advance that that's what the rest of the day will be like. So step back slightly and make yourself available for the fire hose. Due to timing, we are going to go straight into Q&A for Katrin, which means unfortunately that you'll have to watch Caleb's video later to hear his comments. But I was, so as you're considering what you'd like to ask Katrin, I just wanted to say that I was really pleased that Katrin mentioned the need to consider this intersection of trade and development, not just from kind of this macro level regulatory framework of government to government, but deriving policy positions and approaches from a micro level approach. And in this area, I think the importance of data is shown. So, for example, the Feed the Future program that Katrin mentioned derives a portion of this analysis from their Women's Empowerment Through Agricultural Index. And that is a multi-dimensional index that tries to identify how empowered or disempowered female farmers are in 19 different countries. And that's obviously vitally important, right? I mean, so we're now including gender components into trade agreements, as was mentioned in TPP. But the estimates for how much economic growth can be derived from empowering women, in particular in agriculture in Africa, are enormous. So being able to study that in an effective manner requires the creation of data and then the analysis of data so that you can aggregate it up to identify what policies are appropriate for both the country level as well as for the regional level and then for a continent-wide approach. So I will open up the floor. There are microphones around the room. Please raise your hand, state your name and where you're affiliated. We'll take a couple of questions at a time. I'll use the moderator's prerogative to jump in whenever I think there's something I'd like to follow up on. So please.
Hi, I'm Ned Steiner with Sandler, Travis, and Rosenberg. Thanks, Katrin. So I'm coming from 2 days of talking about small business and e-commerce exporters in the United States and the growth potential for U.S. exporters. So immediately, I'm projecting here, but I'm starting to think about e-commerce and development. And what happens is that it's not just, oh, here's another way that you can get your product to these various markets, but also it makes you start thinking about, well, what kind of impact should this have on regulations and policy? Because you start thinking about the capacity of SMEs to comply or to access or get information, and immediately you think simplification, right? You think de minimis. You start thinking about different priorities for these organizations and a different focus perhaps or a different prioritization based on the size of these organizations. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think needs to happen in terms of not just facilitation and customs and on a sort of a broader level, but on a regulatory level, what do you think we should be looking at as facilitators of SME exports from Africa in terms of policy priorities? Thank you.
Sir, in the back, let's take a couple.
Hi, I'm Andrea Charters from Potomac Law Group, and I'm wondering what your efforts pertaining to the data that Kyle mentioned are as far as researching what types of trade provisions are more in demand by traders in Africa and Asia, so that similar to the way that the UCC has grown in the US, taking account of business needs, how do you develop a legal regime for a country or a region that is not a set of rules piled on top of people, but kind of emerges from the bottom up.
Yeah. Good questions.
Great. Can we take one more? Up in the front. Yes, sorry, please do, as you're listening to answers and listening to questions, begin formulating your own. Don't assume that the question that you are thinking is something that no one else in the room is considering, and that you're going to sound either uninformed or stupid, not to put it bluntly. This is a learning opportunity. So please come forward with your questions.
Thank you so much. Thanks for breaking that. I was, getting nervous. My name is Elisa Lozer. I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Foreign Agricultural Service in the Office of Capacity Building and Development. So Katrin, thank you so much for your presentation. It was extremely relevant to me. I have some colleagues in the room as well. So my question is, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a huge disconnect between the policy itself and the implementation of the policy. So I work down here at the bottom, and I get emails, oh, by the way, you just got $5 million to implement SPS capacity building in Tanzania, for example. And I think that my question is, how do we break that disconnect? So much so that the implementation is effective and actually gets to what the policy is trying to get to in the first place.
Excellent question.
Thank you.
Great.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Those were fantastic questions, and I thank you all. And I think your question and Andrea's question were related, and maybe I'll start with that and then speak to your question as well. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. I saw it quite a bit when I was at USTR, and I started at USTR in 1999. So for those of you who remember 1999, it was when the whole Seattle ministerial happened, and trade went from really being kind of a technical specialization to being on a very global stage. And we had to start thinking about a lot of these things on trade development. I think, they were, like I said before, there's a long history of this. This is not a new topic. But I think that some of the ways that we deal with it maybe are continuing to evolve, which, as I said before, I think is a good thing. But this was one of the biggest challenges that I saw. It was hard sometimes, even in my seat as a negotiator, to understand from my negotiating partner what they wanted sometimes. And I would ask them, to what extent they had done consultations, and had they spoken with smaller producers, and had they spoken with women's groups. And I'm sure that you can guess sometimes how the answers to that would vary. So when I left government, I started really trying to figure this out. And I have, I guess, developed a bit of an approach to how to do this, but by no means does that mean that that approach covers everything that it should. And I think this question of data is something that I continue to think about. So I'll just give you a few responses and ideas. And again, I would love to keep in touch and to have your thoughts on this, because I think we all need to be working on this together. This is a big, big topic. So what I have done for the last 10 years, and now we've got that embedded into all of our projects, we do a lot of in-country consultations. We meet with as many people as we can find, and we try not to limit it just to those who would be, easily part of those conversations. So we don't just do those in capitals. We don't just do them with larger companies. We try to get out into the field and meet with companies of a variety of sizes and try to meet as I've said before, trying to really make sure that the perspectives of women are heard in this too, because they're often different. They're very different. We've done, in studies, and the World Bank has done a lot of good work on this as well. But I think that, there are laws that impact women specifically, and then there are a lot of laws that impact women differently just because of their role in the economy. And it's very important to understand all of those and to understand how the whole economic system is structured. So we do a lot of our own data collection through field consultations and interviews, which is one of the ways I know that the World Bank also collects data for some of these benchmarking studies that they do. We also, of course, will look at the data that's been collected by others. But I think that there still is a gap there. And I don't know, we also work with local partners too. This one group that I mentioned in Tanzania, SAGCOT, the project that we're doing with them, they are really driving it. We are providing the legal and regulatory expertise, but they are, they have partnerships across the country with a range of companies. So I think that that is very important, to have these local business organizations that are really driving the process. I don't think that I should go in and say, this is what your legal system should look like. And I don't do that. I will say, here are a range of options. Here are things that have been tried other places. Here's how they have worked or not worked. Here's why this might work here. Here are things that you should think about. But I don't try to be prescriptive, because I don't think that it works very well as an approach. And I also don't think it's the right approach to take from my position. We also, in my team, have lawyers from all over the world. So we have lawyers from Africa, we have had lawyers from Latin America, from Asia. So we try to be very broadly covered in terms of geographies and different legal systems, so that we can learn from each other. So that's one of the other things that I try to do.